you were arrested for domestic violence and it is your first time being arrested, then this video is for you. Because sometimes when people are arrested for domestic violence, especially if they didn't do anything wrong, they were just defending themselves or it was a lie, maybe they're the ones who called the cops, they don't always take it that seriously. They sort of figure the truth will set me free. And sometimes when you do that, when you don't fight your case with everything that you can, you end up getting convicted. So I'm going to be talking about 3 really unexpected consequences that I only know about because of my experience as a domestic violence attorney in California for the past 11 years, and give you a preview, like sort of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, if you will, of what could happen and what I've seen happen to way too many people when they don't fight their cases with everything that they can. My name is Veronica. I'm a domestic violence defense attorney here in California, and I help people put their cases behind them so that they can enjoy their lives and their freedom. I'm also the creator of a course called Defeat the DVRO, in which I teach you from start to finish everything that you need to know to represent yourself at your restraining order hearing and win. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can find your free first class in the course via the link down below. So let's jump right into 3 consequences that you probably are not expecting if this is your very first time getting arrested for domestic violence. And I'm also going to get into 2 examples to show you how this can play out with the victim on your side and with them not on your side. And make sure that you stay tuned for those, because those examples really illustrate how this can all end up really derailing your life. Number 1, you are much more likely to be arrested in the future for domestic violence. You might be thinking, but I'm innocent here. Why would I be more likely to be arrested? I've gone my whole life without being arrested for anything. Why? How could that be the case? Okay, let's say that the cops get a noise complaint from your residence. A neighbor says that they hear a couple arguing. And couples argue, right? And it may not even be you. It might be the other party. If this happens, first of all, the cops make the connection that you, after having a conviction for domestic violence on your record, and they'll see it generally even if you get it expunged, right? They are much more likely to consider this a domestic violence incident. So now they come out, and by the time they're driving to your house, it might be too late for you to avoid an arrest, because the cops look you up, they see your record, they see that you've already been convicted of domestic violence, and they assume that you were guilty in that case, even if you weren't, even if you ultimately decided to take a deal because you hadn't bought it, it became too late, and your attorney, maybe the public defender, told you either take this conviction or go to trial. You didn't want to go to trial, so you took it. The cops don't see any of that. They just see convicted of domestic violence, right? Whatever the charge is, PC 273.5A, 243E1, they see that and they assume that you were guilty. So they're preparing when they are driving over, when they are walking up your steps to arrest you. You have lost any benefit of the doubt that you had. And likewise, if you are accused by someone with a half-baked story of a crime in the future, you are much more likely to be arrested because, again, you don't have the benefit of the doubt. Number 2, if you do get arrested, it is going to be much more serious. Maybe you got probation, classes, a $500 fine the first time, maybe some jail time if you weren't so lucky, but probably not very much. And so you might be thinking, you know what? I already know how this goes. I'm going to have to do these classes. It's going to be annoying. I'm not going to have to pay a fine. It's expensive, but it'll be fine. Well, now the second time you come back with the same charge, with having already been convicted, again, the DA, the judge are not giving you any benefit of the doubt. All of that is gone. You're going to be very surprised when the first offer that they make is not probation, is not jail, but is state prison, because that is very likely to happen, not with the first domestic violence arrest, but when it is your second, when you've come back again, because now they feel like you didn't learn your lesson. You came to court, you got put on probation, you did the classes, and they gave you the benefit of the doubt then, and you just kept doing it. And number 3, it is going to be very difficult within the criminal justice system to make anyone believe that you are innocent. It's going to be difficult, as I mentioned, to get the DA to believe that or the judge to believe that. But what about a jury? You may be thinking, okay, but if I got arrested based on some trumped up charge, the alleged victim maybe is on my side, or I have evidence that they are telling a lie here, I just need to get in front of a jury. Stop right there, because in the state of California, most of the time, and there are some exceptions, if you have a prior conviction for domestic violence, then the jury is going to hear about that. And they're also going to be instructed that they can presume a disposition for domestic violence on your part. They can assume basically that you like to commit acts of domestic violence. And so even though in this case, the evidence may be on your side, maybe the state has nothing, the alleged victim was caught in a lie, already going to jury trial can be an uphill battle because you're sitting there in the defendant's chair. None of the jurors probably have ever been sitting in the defendant's chair before, and they kind of figure, even though they're not supposed to, that you must have done something wrong to get there, right? Well, now, not only will they probably feel like you must have done something wrong to get there, but they're going to hear that you were convicted or you pled guilty to a domestic violence case previously. And then the judge is going to tell them, and you can assume that this person has a disposition for committing domestic violence. So now, when the alleged victim or when the cops go on the stand, and when your attorney is fighting for you and presenting your case, you might have lost, essentially, in the jury's minds at the very beginning, before any shred of evidence was put on. Of course, they are not supposed to do that, but they are human. So let me give you two real-life examples of how this can play out. The first one is when the alleged victim is on your side. So alleged victim is on your side. You don't fight your domestic violence case before the first court date. You end up going with the public defender, taking a conviction for domestic violence, right? And now a few months later, you are with your significant other in the car, and the two of you are having an argument. Maybe your significant other is drunk and belligerent. You are driving, you are sober, you are at the wheel, and they're trying to grab the steering wheel from you, they're yelling at you, it's nighttime. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not committing any domestic violence here. You're just trying to get the two of you home safely. But there's a cop behind you. Cop runs the plates. Cop sees you, someone who has been convicted of domestic violence. You know what they are going to do? They're going to be pulling you over. And probably at that point, you're going to get arrested for domestic violence, no matter what your drunk significant other might say to them. The second example, let's say that you get falsely accused of domestic violence, and you really think, you know what, I don't have the money for a private attorney, I'm just gonna go with a public defender. Public defender convinces you to take a deal, you are going to be on probation, 52 weeks, domestic violence classes, whatever, and you think, okay, you know what, with my current job, I'm not gonna lose my job with that. I don't want to go into debt trying to hire an attorney to go to trial or to fight for me here. You know, that's really going to be tough right now. And, you know, I can get this thing expunged. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take the conviction. I'm done with this person, right? Which is probably the smart choice. Okay, so you're doing your 52 weeks DV classes. Things are looking better. You're dating again and you meet someone. And once the two of you begin to get closer, you tell them, and you're kind of afraid to admit it, but you tell them about what happened with the domestic violence case. You tell them the whole story. Maybe you tell them about how terrible it was to be arrested, how you were really scared. Okay, what you've just given that person is power over you. And unfortunately, I have had many cases with this exact type of scenario where the new person who seemed lovely at first eventually goes crazy. Maybe it's kind of your fault. Maybe you have a type. Maybe you did something wrong and you weren't the best in the relationship. Maybe you have a pattern of that. But they have power, far more power than anyone would have had over you if you hadn't been convicted of domestic violence previously, if you had been able to get that case dropped maybe before court or classes in exchange for a dismissal, or even taking it to trial if you had to. And you've also given them an idea, unfortunately. A lot of people don't necessarily know how all of this stuff works, right? If you're not in the legal profession, and before I actually handled criminal cases, I didn't really have an understanding of how all this worked and how easy it is for somebody just based on someone's word to end up getting arrested, having criminal charges against them, maybe getting convicted, maybe going to jail or prison, having their life ruined. So they may not have fully realized that either until you explain to them what happened with your first case. Now, what is the solution to that? Fighting your first case as hard as you can. These types of stories that I'm telling you, while they are not one single client's story, I'm telling you that most people who come to me who are facing a second domestic violence charge, the reason that they found themselves in that position is because of a scenario very similar to what I am explaining to you here. And the only way for them to really have avoided that, unless they want to live like a monk, all that they really could have done differently was, for that first case, fought it like their lives depended on it. That's all that they could have done. So if you have been arrested for domestic violence, the fact that you are innocent, the fact that the alleged victim is on your side and wants charges dropped, the fact that your cousin Bob tells you that he found himself in this exact situation and everything got dropped for him, doesn't mean that you shouldn't take your case seriously. This is the time to take it seriously, because not only could this case potentially get worse as time goes on. For example, if you don't try to get charges dropped before court and charges get filed against you, it is much more difficult to get them dropped later. But the consequences that you might not really see, that you might not really be thinking of, can derail your life in a serious way, not just now, but in the future. And who wants to live their life in fear that they could lose everything at any moment just because they get accused by someone, or because the cops don't bother doing an investigation and just make an arrest? I hope you found this video helpful. If you have a domestic violence case, feel free to give me a call. You can find my number down below. You can also book a consultation there. And if you did find it helpful, please don't forget to subscribe, like, ring the bell, and follow me on Instagram.